Broadcasting live from Jackson and State in Chicago's Loop, it's Radio DePaul Sports and Entertainment.
You're listening to RDSE, where sports and showbiz meet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard, presented by RDSE. I'm your host, Michael Lyons. First podcast back for the winter quarter. It's been a while, so trying to get back into it. This NBA regular season has been interesting so far. I mean, a lot of people would have never expected the season to come out to how it is right now. I mean, we're looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers leading the Eastern Conference with 33 wins and 4 losses, 37 games into the season. With a brand new head coach, nobody expected this. Boston Celtics, obviously, they're still at the top. They're still a powerhouse in the East. They're still a team that you need to worry about. But Cleveland leading the East with a 20-1 home record is crazy to think. They're on pace to win above 60 games, close to 70 games. They're on track right now. I mean, we're a little bit under halfway through the season, and if they go halfway into the season with 4 wins or 4 losses, you can look at them only losing 12 to 8 games this year, which is going to be tougher down the stretch to continue winning these games, but we could be seeing history here in Cleveland. Now, the East is kind of shaping up how some people would expect. I mean, the teams that are locked into the playoffs so far: Boston, New York, Cleveland, Orlando, Milwaukee, and Miami, who are all teams that you could see going into the season like, yeah, they could fight for that playoff spot. Maybe the Heat still in that play-in spot. Orlando maybe in the play-in spot. But Milwaukee, New York, Boston, Cleveland, those are all teams that you expected to make the playoffs. Milwaukee turned it around after a very poor start to start the season. And then we're looking at the play-in teams in the Eastern Conference right now: Indiana, Detroit, Atlanta, and Chicago. Detroit having one of the biggest bounce-back seasons in NBA history. Their wins from last year are almost the same as they do this year, which is a testament of how bad they were last year. But this team has really bounced back. J.B. Bickerstaff has really taken over for them. And, I mean, this is a team that could obviously make the playoffs. Like, I like this team, and I like Indiana. If this is how the play-in sets up, that those are the 2 teams that get into the playoffs. Philly, obviously, out of the play-in right now. Definitely not a team that people expected to not even be in a play-in spot. But tough start to the year, a lot of injuries. Now Jaron McCain going out for the rest of the year after his meniscus surgery. Brooklyn, Charlotte, Toronto, and Washington are all teams that people expected to be towards the bottom of the league, especially in the Eastern Conference. And then in the West, it's shaping up a little bit like how people would expect, but OKC, 30-6. Like, the conferences are just the number 1 seed in each conference is far and above better than the other teams in their conference. And then for second place in the West, Houston, probably the biggest shock of the Western Conference is Houston, who missed the play-in last year, being the number 2 seed. Then we see Memphis, Denver, Dallas, and the Lakers behind them, all within 5 games of each other. So these could all switch up. I mean, obviously in the Eastern Conference, there's a lot of teams that are pretty close. But I'm just speaking off of right now. This is what it would shape up. But Memphis, again, another team that you would expect to be in the playoffs. I mean, maybe a play-in team, but definitely a playoff team. Denver, playoff team, not expecting them in the play-in. Dallas, playoff team after being in the finals last year. The Lakers are a little shocking. I mean, I would have expected them to be in a play-in spot. But, again, 2.5 games separate the Lakers from the Kings, who are the 11th seed. Now, in the play-in spots right now, Minnesota, a team that we definitely expected more of this season after making that huge trade. to get Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. Clippers just continue to struggle with injuries. Kawhi now away with his family in LA, taking time off, which prayers up to everybody in LA that is dealing with the wildfires. Obviously, we saw the Lakers, like JJ Redick's house burned down, so just send your prayers out to them, and hopefully everything goes well for them and we can get back to them worrying about basketball and not their life. But at the end of the day, lives and your family is more important than basketball for these guys. So that's obviously what they need to be worrying about. Golden State Warriors at the 9 seed. They started off hot this year. Buddy Hield was really hot to start the season, but he has fallen off a cliff since the first 2 months of the season. He's just continued to go down and down and down. They did make that trade for Dennis Schroeder, which I like, but he has not been a shell of what he was in Brooklyn. The Spurs, again, a team that I expected to make the play-in, but they're still struggling a lot, and they have a lot of young guys on the team, so you expect that. Chris Paul, I would have expected him to make the team a little bit better, but they're still a respectable team, especially, obviously they still don't have Pop, so we're still waiting for Pop to come back, so maybe when Pop comes back, we'll see what goes on there. But then out of the play-in spots right now is Sacramento, which we'll dive into that more later on in the podcast. Phoenix, obviously a team that we're expecting to make the playoffs, but they're sitting at the 12th seed behind Sacramento, San Antonio, and they're not even in a play-in spot. Portland, Utah, and the Pelicans as the worst team in the Western Conference, which was not a thing I was expecting this year. Out of all the teams, I was expecting Portland or Utah to be the worst, but Portland has exceeded what I expected of them. They're still bad, but they've exceeded what I've expected from them. Now, jumping over to stats a little bit, points-wise, Jokic, Giannis, Shea, Jason Tatum, and Kevin Durant all leading. Those are teams players that you expect to be leading in points. Maybe not Jokic as much, but he's had to carry a little bit more of the load since the Nuggets role players and other stars have not played to the level that they usually do. In the assist category, Trae Young obviously leading the league with 12 assists, almost 3 whole assists above Nikola Jokic, who is in second. Cade Cunningham having an amazing year in Detroit. Another key to why Detroit is exceeding what was expected of them. Tyrese Halliburton continuing to get assists in Indiana, and then LeBron continuing to be that playmaker for the Lakers, which is a team that struggles with it and has always had struggles with it other than him. On the defensive side, rebounds. Cat is kind of a surprise to be leading the league in rebounds per game. Domantas Sabonis obviously in second he's always there. He's always leading, always second, always third. Jokic having an amazing year, 13 rebounds. He wasn't my pick to win MVP, and my pick is still the front runner, but I wouldn't be mad if Jokic wins MVP, especially with the season that he is having. Obviously, Denver is not having the same level of success as they usually do, but that's not on him at all. Blocks, Victor Wembanyama, my pick for Defensive Player of the Year, 4 blocks and a steal he's averaging this year. He's having an amazing year in San Antonio on the defensive side of the ball. Offensive side of the ball still needs some work, but defensive-wise, 4 blocks. That's a block and a half more than the person in second place, which is Walker Kessler. And then steals, the great barrier thief, Dyson Daniels, one of the sickest nicknames that's come out of this season. Having a great year in Atlanta. It could be a guy that you could see maybe winning Most Improved Player if he could step up on the offensive side a little bit more. But Atlanta, I like their team. I like the moves they made. Dyson Daniels is showing that obviously he's playing better than DeJounte Murray is this year because DeJounte Murray hasn't really played as much. But now we'll jump over to how my picks for the awards are shaping up right now. So obviously, if you follow the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast on Instagram, I made a post my first post on there is picks for this year's award winners. So I'm going to just go over who I picked and if I feel like they still have a chance. So for MVP, I picked Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is averaging 31.3, 5.6, and 6.1 assists, and he's shooting over 50%. For the number one seed in the West with a 30-6 record, I believe he should win MVP, and he is still the front runner. But Nikola Jokic is coming for that MVP, and if the Nuggets turn it around and they become the 2 seed and they go on a winning streak, obviously I can see Jokic winning it, but still, voters fatigue kind of thing. I still believe it's Shai's award to win this year, but I'm not going to be mad if Nikola Jokic wins. Then, Defensive Player of the Year, like I said, Victor Wembanyama, averaging 4 blocks and 1 steal, a block and a half more than the person in second place average-wise. He's having an amazing year. I believe he's picked for Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, the NBA wants him to win an award at such a young age. He's not on that level for MVP yet, but Defensive Player of the Year, he's on that scale, and he deserves it. Then, Rookie of the Year, I'm not going to say it's a terrible pick. I picked Zach Edey, was my pick to win Rookie of the Year, and so far, I mean, he's shown flashes, but he's just struggling to move on defense and struggling to keep up with the fast-paced nature of the NBA. He's still in talks, but he's not the front runner. I think right now he's 4th in votes for MVP behind Alex Sarr, who was number 1, and V. Missy, who, in my opinion, he's been the only highlight of the New Orleans Pelicans season this so far. But I don't think Zach Edey will win. I'll take my respect for Zach Edey back, and I will say that he doesn't deserve Rookie of the Year, and one of these other guys like Alex Sarr, V. Missy deserves it. And then one that's kind of a toss-up. I could see him winning. I could see him not winning. There's a lot of people in there. As most improved player, I picked Jalen Johnson. He's having a great year in Atlanta. They're not great still, but they're pretty decent, and obviously he's the second best player on that team behind Trae Young. And I mean, like, his stats, they talk for him, but like, I don't know. Some of the other guys in there, I could also see winning it, so he's still a toss-up, but I'm still going to stick with my guns and stay with him. For Sixth Man of the Year, was a biased pick, obviously. I'm a Kings fan. I want some Kings players to get an award. Sixth Man of the Year, I picked Malik Monk. He's not even in the race. And if I'm going to pick anybody from that, it's going to be either Peyton Pritchard or Russell Westbrook could win this award. But definitely not Malik Monk, who I wanted to see win it. I thought he deserved it last year. But sometimes your team doesn't pan out as they should. Then, moving on, last award for the players, Clutch Man of the Year. Obviously, again, another biased pick. I should have known picking De'Aaron Fox to win this award was going to shell us for the remaining games. This season, like, when we get down the stretch, I should have known DeMar DeRozan is our fourth quarter scorer. The other night, in our 2 overtime game, he scored 9 straight points to win us that game. De'Aaron is not doing that anymore for us. And it's sad to say, but I wanted De'Aaron to win. He's won the award once. I thought we were going to have a better year. I thought we were going to get in closer games. We were going to need him down the stretch. We were going to need DeMar down the stretch, but it just has not turned out. And I don't even have a pick for this award because I don't even want to talk about it. Then, my pick for Coach of the Year, I would feel 100% confident in if it wasn't for Kenny Atkinson in the Cleveland Cavaliers. My pick for Coach of the Year was Ime Udoka for the Houston Rockets. Obviously, if the Cavaliers aren't having the amazing year they're having with a 33-4 record and with a first-year coach for them and Kenny Atkinson, I would have felt completely like my pick was going to win this. But obviously, it should go to Kenny Atkinson. He deserves it. But any other year, I would have felt 100% confident in Ime Udoka, a coach that didn't make the playoffs last year, didn't even make the play-in, to now they're the 2 seed in the West, right behind the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, recently there has been a lot of trade talks around a couple big-time players. Got Jimmy Butler, who requested a trade out of Miami. He wants to go to Phoenix, and we're going to talk about some of the trade talks. Obviously, first one, Jimmy Butler. I think he gets a trade to Phoenix. I don't know exactly how it's going to work out. It's going to have to include Bradley Beal, obviously. But I don't know if Miami wants Bradley Beal. So if there's going to be like a third team involved that's going to take on Bradley Beal and they're going to send some people or picks to Miami, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go. But that is probably the number one guy I see getting moved and the biggest name getting moved this offseason or this regular season. Then another guy that he needs to get shipped out of the situation he's in. He's having the best season of his career. Is Cam Johnson. He needs to leave Brooklyn. Brooklyn needs to trade him, get some draft picks, tank for Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper, whoever they want, whoever is their guy, they need to tank. Cam Johnson will win you a couple games down the stretch that you don't want to win. Ship him off. The Grizzlies right now look like the best bet for him in his career. Obviously, if the Kings were in a position to do something, I would obviously want them. I would want them to go after Cam Johnson, but we're not in a position to trade for a guy like Cam Johnson or even a guy like Kyle Kuzma, who's another guy I could see getting moved. But his trade talks haven't been as like in the talks as much as they have been in recent years when he hasn't been traded. So maybe that's a sign that he will get traded. Maybe that's a sign that he's losing value in Washington. But those are the two main guys that I have picks for where they should go. Obviously, some other guys I would like to see get moved is Robert Williams from Portland, Jordan Clarkson from Utah, and then Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic for the Bulls. One of those guys needs to be moved for the Chicago Bulls to have a competent season. They're not going to make the playoffs. Modest Buzelis is not getting the time he deserves. He's not gaining anything. They need to move on from one of these big contracts, guys that is holding them back, to make this season somewhat of a win. And then obviously, again, De'Aaron Fox has been in trade talks for the last couple weeks, talking about a trade to San Antonio for him, which I don't see us trading De'Aaron. I don't want to say I don't think he's a guy that wants to leave because he kind of deserves to get out of the Sacramento situation that he's been in. He's been in Sacramento his whole career. He's gone through the ups and the downs, and obviously as a Kings fan, I want him to stay. But if you request a trade, I'm like, I get it. I'm not super thrilled. I'm not happy, but I would understand it. But I think with the firing of Mike Brown and bringing in Doug Christie for the interim head coach right now, I think it's changed a little bit of vibes over in Sacramento right now. So we will talk more about that when we come back from commercial break. This has been Beyond the Scoreboard presented by RDSE, and we're going to take a quick commercial break.
Rose crosses over the fadeaway. Got it! They step back and kiss myself. Oh my gosh, MVP time! Windy City Assassin does it again. Rose trying to get open, fires away. Bang! It's over. The Bulls win at the buzzer.
Live from downtown Chicago, you're listening to Radio DePaul Sports, the student voice of your DePaul Blue Demons.
Hello, everyone. We are right back here on RDSC. This is Beyond the Scoreboard. I'm Michael Lyons, first one back of the semester. But right before the commercial break, I said we were going to talk about the Sacramento Kings situation that went on a couple weeks ago. Mike Brown, who signed a 3-year extension in July worth nearly $30 million, was fired after holding a full practice where video came out of him spending time after practice before the press conference that he held, talking with De'Aaron Fox, talking with DeMar DeRozan, talking with all the guys. No idea in the world that his job was about to be taken away from him with no recollection, no idea. Nobody came to him, said, we're thinking about this, but the Kings showed a guy like Mike Brown no respect. In July, obviously, we thought he was our guy. You have respect for him then. When the times get tough and you're not winning games, that the respect doesn't change. He's still the coach of the team. You need to show him respect. Sacramento cannot get star coaches to come to Sacramento after what happened this year because this is going to happen again. It's just like in any sport. You fire somebody without giving them any idea, any respect, any sort of, like, we're thinking, like, we should talk it over. Like, no, you just fired him. He had practice. He then went and did a full press conference. Nobody talked to him. He then got his stuff and left, went into his car, started driving home, and then that's when the assistant GM, not even Monty McNair, the assistant GM called Mike Brown. And he said, wait, we're waiting for Monty McNair to jump on this. And they, like, what do you expect Mike Brown to think? Oh, like this is just going to be a casual talk? No. He could tell what was going on. And obviously that doesn't make him feel any better that you're telling him, you call him, and he answers, and the person that should even be talking to him isn't even there. But then Monty McNair gets on the phone. Mike Brown's still driving home, and that's when they fire him. The NBA is a business. Businesses should not fire people over the phone. If you're going to fire somebody, you fire them in person. Show them some sort of respect. Even if they're the worst employee, if they're the worst coach of all time, you still have to give them some sort of respect. Because at the end of the day, they're still a person. And when you handle a situation with a person badly, it goes back on you just as much as it goes back on them. But I'm not going to totally disagree that Mike Brown should have been fired. Obviously, 2 seasons ago, we had the best offense in the league. We were scoring 176 points in a double overtime game against the Clippers. He brought us out of 16 seasons of nothing in Sacramento and brought us back to the playoffs, where obviously it didn't go as we expected, but it was our first time back in the playoffs. Then, his second season, we go to the play-in, we lose in the play-in. And then his third season, he gets, 30-something games in, 20-something games in, and we're sitting out of the play-in, but we're not, our hopes are not dead. We're 2.5 games out of the playoffs. I don't know exactly what it was in the moment that he was fired, but I don't expect it to be any bigger or different than 2.5 games. So, if you look at that way, yes, Mike Brown probably shouldn't have been fired. But there has been some turmoil between Mike Brown and how he can't control the locker room and De'Aaron Fox not listening to his coach. It's still, at the end of the day, he brought us out of the hole we were in. He made us somewhere where people wanted to watch our games. We had the best fan base for 2 seasons. Our arena was packed for 2 straight seasons. Obviously, this year it's a little different. They fire him. Doug Christie, an assistant coach, ex-Kings guy. I mean, it's kind of a cool narrative. Ex-Kings player is now the interim head coach of the Kings, and he lost his first game, but now he's 5-1. We're on a 5-game winning streak with Doug Christie. What did he do that is differently than Mike Brown did? Because he's an assistant coach. He hasn't coached anywhere else but under this Mike Brown coaching staff. One of the big issues is Mike Brown didn't know the rotations he should be setting. He would send Kevin Huerter out there on his terrible performances and sit Keon Ellis. Give Keon Ellis DNPs. Coach, Keon Ellis is not somebody that should just be sitting on the bench for us. He is the key to us winning. Since the new year, Keon Ellis is averaging 12.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists, and 3 steals. That's not uncharacteristic of him. This is what he does when he's in the starting lineup, when he's getting the minutes he deserves. Keon Ellis is the key to winning in Sacramento. And Mike Brown didn't see that. Last year he saw that. Last year when Keon jumped into the starting lineup, we were winning games. But Mike Brown just went away from Keon this year. There was so many games where Keon getting DNPs. If he comes in over Kevin Huerter, we win those games and we're sitting in a playoff, maybe even a play-in spot. Keon is the key. And we need to continue to play Keon the minutes he deserves. He needs to be in the starting lineup because when we come out with a starting lineup of De'Aaron, Kevin Huerter, DeMar, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis, that is a great offensive team. But defensive-wise, De'Aaron can sit down and play defense. He's a decent perimeter defender. He gets some steals. Kevin Huerter is a liability on defense. He's a cone on defense. Teams attack Kevin Huerter. They always have attacked him. DeMar, he is not a defensive specialist. He's not anything. He's an offensive guy. And if he's not having a good night, his defensive side is going to be even worse. Keegan Murray is our one, if we come out with that lineup, he is our one really, really good perimeter defender. And he's continued to show that. But when you're the only good perimeter defender, that takes away a lot of energy. You're switching. You're guarding the best player. Then your offensive side is not that good. You're not hitting as much shots. Your legs are tired. Your arms are tired. You're getting beat up from guarding bigger players. And then Sabonis, obviously, he's a big man. He needs to be in the paint. He's a great rebounder. I wouldn't say an elite paint defender, but he is a very solid, very good paint defender. But in the perimeter, in the mid-range, he's not guarding anybody. But when you come out with a lineup with Keon in there instead of Kevin Huerter, Keon is a defensive menace. He's all over the court. He gives us a lot of energy, which fuels not only the defensive side of the ball, but the offensive side of the ball. And he is not a liability on offense. He can hit shots. He's not a great offensive scorer, not a great three-point shooter, but he can give us more on the defensive side of the ball and give us a little bit on the offensive side of the ball, where Kevin Huerter is giving us nothing on the defensive side of the ball, and sometimes he gives us nothing on the offensive side of the ball, and sometimes he'll be elite on the offensive side of the ball. Kevin Huerter is too wishy-washy, he's so hit or miss. And that's okay when you're coming off the bench because, you're not entirely, I don't want to say important, you're still important, but if you're coming off the bench and you're having a bad game, it's okay. But when you're in the starting lineup and you go through a stretch of 10 games where you can't hit a shot, that's when it gets bad. especially if you're not giving anything on the defensive side of the ball, because then you lose hope. Your shots aren't going down on the offensive side of the ball. Your defense is going to be even worse. You're not going to put in the effort. Keon continues to give effort on defense. He'll guard whoever you want him to guard. He dives on the floor, and it fuels the Sacramento Kings to victory. If we want to make the play-in or the playoffs, Keon Ellis needs to be in the starting lineup game in and game out. If he's healthy every night, Keon Ellis needs to be in the starting lineup. I'm just going to put it straight like that. Keon is our key to victory. Obviously, it shouldn't be like that. It should be De'Aaron. It should be DeMar. It should be Domantas Sabonis. We have a three-headed monster if they're on their game. But offensive side of the ball, defense wins championships. It's the motto. Nobody wants to admit it, but defense wins championships. Now, we have a tough game tonight against the Boston Celtics. We'll see what we can get out of this game. But then Sunday, 3:30, we play the Chicago Bulls. DeMar's first game back in Chicago. I will be at that game. It's going to be fire. I can't wait to see De'Aaron, DeMar. It's going to be my first Kings game I've ever been to. First Bulls game I've ever been to. Never been to the United Center, so I'm hype about that. Got some good seats. And I'm just excited. First off, I'm excited to see Keon Ellis. People have always said that, like, when I get hype about these guys that they're not completely sure of, they like to kind of make fun of me. But when I listen and I see Keon Ellis play, I see a star. Keon Ellis is Sacramento, in the heart of Sacramento right now, and that's all we need to pay attention to. Tonight, we got some good games. Golden State versus Indiana. They had a couple good games early on in the season. I can see the Golden State Warriors winning tonight. Milwaukee versus Orlando. I got Milwaukee winning it. Even though Orlando is supposed to get Paolo Banchero back soon. Or he might be playing tonight, actually. Let me check. But if they get Paolo back, it'll be a good game. They're just so beat up. Yep, he's supposed to. They're hopeful that he might play tonight. So I'm excited to see Paolo back after his injury, but they're beat up right now, but they're still staying afloat. The Pelicans in Philly, I'm not really interested in watching this game. I mean, Philly is Philly. New Orleans is New Orleans. Then we got Sacramento versus Boston. If we can sneak out a win tonight in the Garden, this will prove that Doug Christie has some voodoo magic going on with his Kings team, because right now we are at 18% predictor to win this game. But I don't know. I kind of feel a little confident. We're coming in hot, and I'm excited to see what we can do. I mean, the Celtics have played some tough teams right now, but they're 4-1 in their last 5 games. Their only loss coming to the Thunder, and some victories over the Nuggets, Rockets, Timberwolves, and Raptors. Some good teams. And the Kings, obviously, they're on a 5-game winning streak, beating the Heat, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, and the Sixers, and the Mavericks. And our last loss was against the Lakers. So we've beat some pretty tough teams. I mean, obviously, the Mavericks aren't the same without Luka. Sixers are not the same team that they usually are. Grizzlies, solid team this year. I'm pretty sure Ja wasn't playing that night, but they're supposed to be coming back. Golden State, obviously, that's kind of our rival. And then the Heat, just some good victories. So I'm gonna pick my Sacramento Kings to win that game tonight. And then the last couple games, we got OKC versus New York, which is probably going to be the game of the night. Isaiah Hartenstein back in New York. OKC versus The Knicks, Shea versus Jalen Brunson. This is going to be a good game, fun game to watch. I think the Thunder come out with a victory. And then Washington versus Chicago. I'm looking going to pick Washington to win the game tonight. Chicago, I don't know. They're too I don't know. They're hit or miss sometimes, and I think I want them to lose tonight so that they're not going into Sunday night at home with any sort of energy, any sort of excitement. So I want to see my Kings beat them on Sunday. And then Brooklyn versus Denver. Denver's going to walk away with this game. That's about all I have for today. It's been fun. We'll see what my Kings can do, see what the NBA is looking like, and we'll be back next Friday. Hopefully I'll be in a good mood because the Kings beat the Bulls on Sunday, but never know. This has been Beyond the Scoreboard presented by RDSE, and I am your host, Michael Lyons.